Welcome to 21World. Constant signal, local language, open group. That's the tagline that I landed on for this project. And to be clear, this is still a rough concept and it's also a rough community blueprint. So this is what this project is about and what I will be talking about. And in the future, I hope that 21World can also be a network of networks. Speaking about the future and the present, I'm recording this on block time 788937, and I gave this talk just a week ago in an unconference in Mexico. So this will be a summary of the current state of the project, and it forced me to gather some ideas. And I will be talking about these ideas in this presentation. So first of all, we have to wrap our head around the problem. So what is the problem that this project is trying to solve? What is the goal? I also will talk about the present state of the project, and hopefully a glorious future of the project. But first of all, let's start by focusing on the problem. So what is the problem? The problem is that this is you. You're a Bitcoiner and you've just read the Bitcoin standard and everything makes sense. You finally understand, the ills of the fiat system and how Bitcoin fixes this. And so you go to this guy. This is not you, this is your friend, and he's a no-coiner. And you give him the Bitcoin standard or similar literature. And because everything is in English and, it's not necessarily relatable because it's focused on not necessarily the country your friend is from. And your friend might not be proficient enough in English to understand economic concepts and other concepts that might be relevant. So your friend cries for another reason than you did before, not out of happiness, but out of confusion and sadness. And so he will go to YouTube or TikTok or whatever the cool kids use nowadays to look up stuff and look up information, and he will type in Bitcoin. And this is still, unfortunately, the state of crypto, the results that come up when you type in Bitcoin. And this is, of course, a very sad state of affairs. So this is not your friend. Your friend doesn't know what he's getting himself into. This is you because you're a Bitcoiner. And this is just a very depressing state of affairs. So I have experienced this myself. I've talked to many people that have experienced this. And they all tell me the same thing. They all tell me, Gigi, you don't understand. I'm the only Bitcoiner in the country. So I traveled to multiple countries in the last couple of years, talked to many people, talked to many Bitcoiners, and we talked about this problem and our experience in, trying to orange pill friends and family, trying to spread the word of Bitcoin, trying to educate. And this sentence was actually said to me very recently as a year ago, by multiple people. So this was multiple people that I talked to. And it just happens to be so that they were all in the same country. So this is definitely a problem that needs solving. So the problem is that everyone feels like this. I'm the only Bitcoiner, very alone, somewhere on the moon. And I know that this is a problem because that was also me a couple of years ago. And if you put yourself on a map, that makes it all the more depressing. You think all the fun stuff is happening somewhere else. All the fun stuff is happening overseas or like in the US or in a country like El Salvador or what have you. And nothing is happening in your country. And you're the only one who is interested in Bitcoin. And you're the only one who understands the gravity of Bitcoin. Everyone else, is busy with other things or busy shitcoining and so on. So it doesn't matter where you are. That might be you in Mexico, or there are many countries, many communities, many areas of the world still where it will feel this way. So with the problem in mind, let's talk about the goal. I always like the saying that understanding the problem correctly is already 80% of the solution. So we have 80% of the solution already. And so the problem is a missing connection. And the goal is to connect with other Bitcoiners. And then the obvious solution is to build a network. So if we look at all these desperate nodes in a random country, They all think they're alone, but they are not. And so you have all these Bitcoiners that you just need to connect. And the question becomes, how do you build a network? So you build a network by creating the first connection. And that's what we did in the German-speaking world. So that's where the origin of this project is, and why I think we have some interesting lessons to share and some experience to how to do this properly and how to think about this properly. So bringing one node online is still loneliness. I believe that you have, from the get-go, you have to start with an open group and you have to start as two. Because two nodes make a network. Just like in Bitcoin, first node, Satoshi, second node, Hal. From that point on, it was a network. And with this in place, with a network in place, you can start to produce a constant signal. You can create a beacon in cyberspace that produces a constant signal and that attracts others. So the goal is not to go from door to door and tell everyone about our Lord and Savior Satoshi Nakamoto. The goal is to attract like-minded people and bring them to you. So have a mechanism so that people can find you and connect to you on their own accord. I think that's very important. That's the only thing that really scales, and you can just keep doing what you're doing and other people will connect to you, come online, and the group, the network will grow. If you do this consistently enough, more and more people will find you, more and more people will come online, and in the end, you will be able to color your whole country orange. I can talk about this with some level of confidence because we managed to do this in the German-speaking world, and I think this experiment is repeatable. That's why I like to share what we have learned, pass this on, so that this can be repeated in other countries, in other languages as well. I'm obviously speaking English now to to tell you about the concept of 21.World, but in the German community, we did everything in the German language. More on that in a minute. So the goal of 21.World is to color every country orange, color countries orange one by one. And there is a secondary goal that I would like to talk about as well. So the secondary goal is to elevate Bitcoiners from feeling alone and disconnected to something where they can say, I have found my people. So this is also something that happened in the German-speaking world, and we have obviously multiple sub-communities and so on. But it's awesome that you can say, I have found my people, and you finally have this connection that every human obviously needs. And with all that in place, I want to talk about the present. So we talked about the problem, we talked about the goal of the project, and already hinted at the solution. And the present is interesting because we kind of did this backwards. And I always like this Satoshi quote where he also says he did this kind of backwards. He first wrote the code and then he wrote the paper. In the German community, this kind of happened to us, and we didn't even necessarily know what we did right. It just kind of worked, and so we kept doing it. And so I want to look at the past to help everyone understand and also help us understand, I guess, why this worked so well. I think by thinking about this a lot and talking to the originators of the German project quite a bit, I think I'm able now to distill exactly the components that made it work. So in 2018, the map was not orange at all. I felt very much alone, even though I wasn't. And another node reached out to me. So I did not originate 21, which is the German word for 21. But Markus reached out to me. I consider him the original toxic maximalist, and he brought me online, so to speak. So he was toxic way before it was cool, what is now considered quote-unquote toxic, but he's a very principled Bitcoiner. And he convinced me to start a podcast with him. He convinced me to start 21. And this was on the 21st of August in 2019. It's when we connected and we launched our first episode. We released our first episode. This was at the block time 591121. So again, 21, there are no coincidences. And also, as I mentioned before, 21st of August, first Infinity Day, way before Infinity Day was a thing. So sorry, Mr. Knut, we did it first. And with that, we created our beacon. And this beacon, we produced a news show every week, very constantly. And over time, we attracted other Bitcoiners that listened in. And it was very much a rabbit hole recap like news show where you just talk about Bitcoin and talk about related news of the week and try to bring it into a German context and into a context that was relevant for us. And the first people we attracted, they quickly joined the project. So this is Dennis and Daniel and Fab, and we made them co-hosts very early on. So we grew from a group of 2 people to 5 people, and so we had a nice rotation going on. If someone wasn't able to record, we had a pool of people to fall back to, and this is still ongoing. So 2020, 2021, we brought more people in, the crew grew, and we brought Switzerland online, and Serza Trava is our president now. So the whole project grew on its own quite organically. And this is how 21 was born. And in 2021, it really took off because due to the long and constant grind of providing signal and attracting more people, the whole project grew and grew and grew, and the public group grew as well. So we hit a couple of thousand people over the years. And what made this very visible is what I'm going to show you next, which is live data of the 21 meetups. So this is, I believe, what the 21 project is most known for. It's the meetups that are happening in the German-speaking world all over the place, because that's very impressive and that's very visible. And the meetups, they sprung up organically like mushrooms. So this was not a planned, controlled thing. This was very much an emergent, natural thing that happened just because thousands of people were part of this community. And we all met once at an event, and everyone had a good time. So people decided to do this more often and organize in smaller groups, self-organize in smaller groups and create meetups. And we simply, highlighted them on a map. And so I want to focus not on the mushroom part here. So the whole point of 21World is to focus not on the mushroom part, focus not on the meetups, which are awesome. And I don't have anything against meetups, but I really want to focus on cyberspace. How can you build something that scales? How can you build something that attracts people? How can you build something that works? And out of cyberspace, the meetups can grow. So if you only remember one thing out of this whole thing, this whole presentation, is that I believe it's terribly important to do cyberspace first. Most people get this wrong. They try to start a meetup and start a meetup scene, but there is no scene to speak of. And scaling meetups is really, really hard. It's, a small group of people. You probably have to travel across the country to go there, and so on and so forth. So you have to get the cyberspace part right. You have to do cyberspace first. The reason is that cyberspace really scales and it's really easy to do. It's low cost, low barrier to entry. You don't have to hop into the car to drive for 5 hours to meet strangers from the internet. Not everyone is willing to do that. But joining something like a Telegram group or whatever, that's very low barrier of entry, and then you can start to get to know people. And with that in place, I want to focus on one dot in particular on this map. And it's this dot, the red dot, that's not even on the map because it's 2,000 kilometers away. And that was one dot that was started by a group of people. And it was not an 21 thing, it was Jeremy Beer. So with that, the whole idea of 21World was born, because with that, we realized, all right, okay, we might be able to export this whole concept and just open source it, let everyone copy it freely. And like the people from Turkey, Kemal and others, they reached out to us and asked us, can we copy the logo? Can we do the same thing that you're doing, just not in German, but in Turkish? And we're like, of course, that's great. Come on, go ahead and please do. And so that's what happened. And we went from 21 to 21. And a little over a year ago, they just had their first birthday. Also, 21 was launched, which is the ex-Yugoslavia countries, so they all speak the same language, more on the language part in a bit. And other forks started appearing by open sourcing the concept. So this was done, very, very swiftly. We just drafted up a one-page PDF document on how to do this and put the logos online, and everyone was able to fork it as they see fit. And so we have an Italian fork with Twentyone. We have a Polish fork, and very new, we have a fork in Portugal with Twentyone, and we also have a fork in El Salvador. And so that's the current state of the map. That's the current state of the project. I think there are some other forks. I don't know how active they are, but that's what's currently online, and this is the present. So that's where we are right now. And me, by having to create this presentation, I think I have a better understanding now of how the concept can be exported even more successfully. So with the present in place, I want to talk about the future. And the future, of course, is very easy to visualize. So we want to go from something like this to something like this, a hyper-Bitcoinized world where you have in every country a trusted, awesome, local and localized Bitcoin community that you can go to for help, for community, for signal, and so on. And the question is how to do this. Well, as I said in the beginning, the 21-World thing is also a community blueprint. It's like, how did we do it in Germany? How did other people do it? How can you think about doing it? How can you apply this to your community, to your country, to your language? So the whole thing is supposed to be a concept, a blueprint, and a network of networks. Let's focus on the blueprint for a little bit. So the blueprint, it's 3 easy steps, but there's also step 0. So I lied a little bit. There's actually 4 steps, but the step 0, as I said in the beginning, is very important. I think it's the most important step, actually. You have to team up. Don't start it alone. Don't do it alone. It's very easy to give up again if you're alone. And with like the open group in place already, it's way easier to bring more people in and be motivated and stay motivated and so on. If you're just doing your own thing alone, it's very easy to, have an off day, skip an episode, those kind of things. So team up, don't do it alone. Step 1, step 1, create a beacon in cyberspace. Step 2, speak the local language. And number 3, provide an open space. So those 3 are the main ingredients of the blueprint. Those are the 3 main things that make everything work. And there's a 4th one, but it is an ongoing thing. Consistency, consistency, consistency. I think everyone who ever created something knows how important this is. I want to mention it specifically. So my suggestion is to stick with it for at least 21 weeks. Let's go through these quickly, briefly, one by one. So team up. The way I like to think about it is like a gym buddy, Don't do it alone. Start as 2. I really want to emphasize this. Start as at least 2 people. So you and another Bitcoiner. That's when the magic can start to happen. That's when you can create the beacon. That's when you can start producing constant signal. Regarding the beacon, you can picture this as a lighthouse in cyberspace, like create a beacon in cyberspace. The cyberspace part is very important. Again, cyberspace first. Don't stand on the podium in a park. This doesn't scale. Only like 10 people will hear you. If you create a beacon in cyberspace, potentially millions of people can hear you. That's a big difference. It's also way easier to listen to past stuff, read past stuff, and so on. So regarding the beacon in cyberspace, I already mentioned the weapon of choice for us was a podcast. A medium of choice for us was a podcast. It might also work if you do a newsletter or a YouTube channel or whatever else you can think of. I'm sure it works with multiple media types, but a podcast I think is easiest. What you have to be mindful of is you want to have global reach. it should be very easy to broadcast this signal. You should not artificially restrict this signal, so don't put anything behind paywalls or anything like that. You want to have as many people listen to that as you can. Another benefit of a podcast is there are well-known formats that you can't just copy from popular Bitcoin podcasts. So you can do a news recap like Rabbit Hole Recap does it. You can do readings of awesome Bitcoin articles or even books. Some books are open source that you can just read, like Guys One from Bitcoin Audible does it. You can let Bitcoiners tell their stories. So that's a format we championed in the German-speaking world. It was really successful. It's called Der Weg, which is basically your path towards Bitcoin. And just ask other Bitcoiners how they discovered Bitcoin and let them talk for an hour. Very easy to do. That doesn't take a lot of preparation because you just let the other person talk. You can, of course, also do interviews, like more professional interviews like Stefan Livera does them, or Madi Bent from TFTC. That, of course, takes a little bit more expertise and preparation because interviewing is actually a skill you need to learn. Anyway, the important part about doing something like this, whether it's a podcast or a newsletter or a YouTube channel, is to focus on the local culture and to focus on the local language. So you don't want to do this necessarily in English, if unless, of course, the country you're coming from is English native. But for us, this was German. So you want to focus on the local language. And I mean this in both senses of the word. So you want to speak the language of the people. You want to speak the local language. And again, for us, this was German. And so very simple. We had one rule: no English. No English guests, no matter how appealing they might be. And no English panel groups, no English discussions, and also not necessarily focusing on, news from other parts of the world. Also in terms of culture, for us, it was very easy. It's beer and Dirndl and Lederhosen and sauerkraut and sausages and so on. But more importantly, in terms of culture, in terms of Bitcoin culture, we had one rule, which was no shitcoins. I mean, by now this should go without saying, but when we started the project, there was still, the conversation about crypto was still elevated and everything was way more mixed together. By now it should be clear that Bitcoin only is where the signal lies. And in terms of this cultural approach, the no shitcoin approach, there is an immediate tension with the third aspect of the whole idea, which is the open group. So you want to bring as many people in as you can. So we had an open public Telegram group that anyone could join, but this was moderated. So if you brought up shitcoins one too many times, then you were just kicked or even banned from the group, because we don't want to water down the conversation. We don't want to focus on Ponzi schemes or snake oil salesmen. We want to focus on Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. And so there is this tension between providing an open space to make it easy for others to participate and keeping the shitcoiners out. When I say open space, again, I want to emphasize this again. Open space, I mean cyberspace. I don't mean meetups. So don't think meetups when I say open space. I mean open groups that are easy to join, where it's easy to participate online. For us, again, this was a Telegram group. It can also be a chat, a matrix channel. It can also be IRC. It can be whatever, like in your country, a Facebook group might be more appropriate, or a WhatsApp group, or whatever works. So I don't think it's crucial what kind of technology you use. I think it's just crucial that it is in cyberspace and that it is open, that the barrier to entry is very, very low. So once you have that, other people can come in, and from this public pool of people from your community, you can also source ideas, you can source talent. You will find other people that will want to help you in your efforts. Some might be very good at speaking and educating. Others might be good with graphic design or online work that might needs to be done. Translations is something that almost anyone is eager to work on if they want to orange pill their friends and family, and so on and so forth. Looping back to the starting as two, not starting it alone, but starting it as two. This really helps with consistency. So again, consistency, consistency, consistency. You want to stick with it for at least 21 weeks. So this is a slow and steady grind. It's not something for us that happened overnight. We had to put in the work for many, many years for, the map to turn orange. We started as 2 people, and we showed up week in, week out to talk about Bitcoin, talk about the news, and provide this constant signal. And we stuck it out. And after a couple of weeks, after a year or so, we were able to grow our group. And after 2 years, it really took off. So this will take a while. And I believe if you stick with it for at least 21 weeks, then you made a habit out of it, basically, and you'll stick with it for even longer. So that's basically the blueprint, the 3 core aspects of the blueprint: open group, constant signal, local language. And that's what the 21World community blueprint looks like. With all that being said, I know that was very detailed and very kind of sounds like a recipe that you absolutely have to follow, but that's not the case at all. So we also had a saying in 21, which is 21 is what you make of it. So 21 ist, was du draus machst, and this translates to 21 is what you make of it. So I would like to encourage you to think about this concept. If you want, adopt it. If you want, fork it, copy it, remix it, do with it what you want. This is definitely what worked for us. So I want to basically pass on what we have learned, and it's these 3 elements: open group, local language, and constant signal, and focusing on cyberspace first, and focusing also on bringing as many new people in as you can, and listening to their ideas and their feedback, and have them motivated to participate, and really open it up instead of closing it down. And I want to share the very last slide, the meme that kind of is at least 50% responsible for this whole project, which is the kiss of Satoshi Nakamoto. So the world is not colored orange, is very sad and very alone. And Satoshi came and kissed the world with the gift of Bitcoin, and the world gets all warm and fuzzy inside. And that's basically what 21World would like to be in the future. So thank you for your time and attention. A lot of this stuff is online on Twentyone.World. You can read again about the concept. You can have a look at the blueprint. And we're in the process of building out a network of trusted communities. Thank you.